Guys, welcome back. This is aldusacademy.net and we're getting towards the end of our SpeakerCraft mode training. In this particular video we're going to be looking at how to use the Events Setup tab and what exactly can be achieved by using this tab. So let's get straight into it. Here I am in Easy Tools, picking up where I left off. So Event Setup is just underneath here, underneath Zone Setup. And what Event Setup does is it automates certain tasks of your choice to happen when certain events take place. If I just expand the Event Setup window, we can have a look at what all these events may be. Because I'm using the default project, which I opened by going open and then default project, I've got certain assignments already mapped to events. Let's have a look at what these are. First of all, I know that I've got certain assignments mapped to certain events because I've got a red asterisk appearing next to those events. These are all the events that can take place. So in this example, you can see that when Zone 1 turns on, it turns on to a preset level of -45 dB, which is fairly loud. 0 is actually the full output. You wouldn't really want to go above 0 because then you're adding gain in a way which is against best practice. It's best practice to go up to 0. Now, if I go to party mode setup, you can see that when I enter into party mode, I can actually select which levels all the zones turn on at. So party mode, all the zones turn on together at the same volume. I'll then be able to adjust that volume with the keypad that I used to enter into party mode. So let's have a look at some other events that we may wish to assign commands to. We have system turning on. This is when the first zone turns on. So if all the zones are turned off and a zone turns on for the first time, then whatever commands you place in here will be run. You can place commands directly in system turning on. So for instance, we might want our source components to turn on when we turn the system on. If we have a matrix connected, we may wish to turn the matrix off when the last zone turns off. We may wish to turn it on when the last zone turns on. It depends on your project as to how you wish to configure this, but let's have a look at the example of our source components. So we've got an Airport Express on source 4. We may wish to click on source 4 and add the command to turn the Airport Express on. This will be found in the command library, and I'll just need to double click on the command to assign it to this source output when the first zone turns on. I may wish for all my source components to turn off when I turn the system off, in which case I would simply put the power off commands for those sources in the button properties for that event. I can also have general system commands, so I could have the system set itself to pre-select levels, or I could do specific routing. I could also have a look at maybe routing video separately from the audio. There's a lot of stuff that could be done here, and it's really your imagination that will really give it the power that it deserves. So, we've had a look at commands when the system itself turns on, i.e. the first zone, or the last zone turning off. You might also put screens, any screens that have been left on, or displays, you may wish to turn them off when the system turns off. This would make it possible for the end user to press and hold the power button and turn off not only the MZC in any zone that's turned on, but if you've used the event setup correctly, you could turn off any source components and any screens that may be on as well. Meaning when the end user leaves the house, all that's required is a long button press on the power command in order to shut everything down, if you've programmed the events set up correctly. Just going to minimize these two. And now let's have a look at Zone 1 turning on. We may wish to turn on a screen when Zone 1 turns on, although in this particular example, we've decided to turn the screen on only when we're using the screen. So here you can see, if we go back to our previous lessons, we've added power on commands for our Samsung television when this source turns on. We've turned it off when the next source is selected, but you may choose to turn certain devices, such as an AVR perhaps, would be a good device to turn on here. When feeding into an AVR, you might need to attenuate the volume level further than -45. If you hear distortion coming from your AVR, it's unlikely to be the output of the AVR that's distorting. It's more likely that the output coming out of SpeakerCraft is quite a strong signal, and it's actually saturating the input on the way into the AVR. At which point it might be beneficial, if you're having that issue, to actually turn this particular zone on to a lower level. It's a little bit of trial and error, but if you find you're having distortion at -45, you might want to try -51 or a lesser volume level in order to see if that no longer saturates the input. So you've seen how I've assigned a command. I just click on the zone and double click on the command that I want to associate with that zone turning on. I can also turn screens off with the zone turning off. This might be beneficial even if in this instance, even though I'm turning the screen off when I select other sources, you might turn the zone off directly without selecting another source, in which case the TV is left on. So in order to cover this as an eventuality, you may put your TV or your commands for switching your TV off in here. There's other things you might do. You might have a fan, for instance, in your system 1 turning on, so that when system 1 turns on, a fan turns on. Let's look at how we would do that. In order to do that, you might wish to make the relay go live. So the contact closures, you might put a close contact closure in on one of these commands, just here under general system commands. So now we've looked at commands that could be triggered when we turn a zone on and commands that could be triggered when we turn a zone off. We've also got the option for party mode, as we've discussed, so you could turn zones on to a pre-select level. You might decide that when you turn a zone on, you could select it to a specific source. There's a lot you can do here, as you can tell, and it's really up to you to match your customer's requirements and add additional automation into the MZC system. A lot of installers just use the MZC system as an amplified audio matrix and don't have much automation control programmed in. This would be the best place to do it if it's event based. So it's the events tab in the project content tree. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.